Hey guys, I'm Dorian Day and welcome to Massive in Depth number 18. Today we're going to be going over how to make vibrato leads. Once again, this video accompanies a pack released from Sick Twisted Mind Studios called Massive Complete Vibrato Leads. You can find the purchase link and demo links in the description. I'm going to talk a little bit about the sound design tips for the vibrato leads, then we're going to go over 4 presets in the demo pack. So the first thing we should go over is what vibrato actually is. Put simply, it's pitch modulation. The concept is as old as instruments themselves, and probably the most common encounter most people have with it is on guitars, especially lead guitar. Vibrato is simulated very easily on synthesizers using an LFO on oscillator pitch, and is a very important tool for adding interest to static sounds. Sometimes vibrato is all it takes to turn a plain melody into something powerful and emotive. Vibrato leads can be heard in literally every form of dance music, but have been particularly popular in dubstep, progressive house, and electro house. A vibrato lead is literally no different than any other kind of lead, except that you modulate pitch and choose the other synth parameters to complement the vibrato, since that is the main focal point of the sound. An easy thing to do if you have a large preset library is to grab some leads you already like and add vibrato to the sound. Sometimes other synth settings will clash with the effect of the vibrato, so adjustments will be made and you will probably want to switch out some of your macros. Overall, this is a great way to create a large variety of leads really quickly. The alternative to this is to start from scratch and turn vibrato on right away. Set it to the maximum rate and depth you think you may use and design the rest of the sound around this. So for example, so if this is the max amount of depth and rate of vibrato I want on my lead, then from here I would start designing the rest of the sound. So just for example, so when you think you have something you like, then you need to turn vibrato off and make sure everything still sounds good. In this particular case, it still sounds nice and gritty and dirty. From here, save the patch and make variations on this theme. Change the waveforms, change the filters, change the inserts or modo SCs. Or change your macros, and all of a sudden you have a bunch of patches that you can quickly move through. In fact, that's a trick that you can do with the demos that I give. So you have 4 demos here. Go through and just change the waveforms and change things around, change the effects, swap things out, try and remake some portion of one patch in another patch, and all of a sudden you have a new lead and you don't even need my packs. One trick that's pretty common on vibrato leads is to add an envelope to the rate so it evolves slowly as the note is sustained. So we'll switch out like this. And increase the attack. So the vibrato slowly evolves as the note is sustained. However, this method doesn't give you the same level of control as using lane automation with a macro knob. All right, so now I'm going to go over the demo presets. So starting with number 3. All right. So first of all, the first OSC is square saw with wavetable position all the way to the left, intensity in the center. Oscillator 2 is additive 5, wavetable position all the way to the right, intensity all the way to the right, amp left of center. Third OSC is strontium. The pitch on the second is the fundamental, same with the third. Wavetable position on the third oscillator is all the way to the right. Intensity is slightly less then all the way. Amp is right of center at like 1 o'clock. Mod OSC 2 octaves above. Only phase modulation on OSC 1. Knob all the way to the left. No noise. No feedback. All 3 oscillators have their filter mix in the center. So they're equally going to each. We have our filter modes on parallel. We have a low pass for the first filter and no filter for the second. But what is this saying? Oh yeah, okay, so this is a slight mistake. All right, so that's just saying that we're only using this top filter. So I turned this one off and routed all the audio up. So we're only using a low pass filter. Our cutoff is set slightly above directly left. Our resonance is left of middle, and our mix is all the way on filter 1, so we're only using filter 1. We have a little bit of reverb. Dry wet all the way down, size all the way down, density all the way down, color all the way to the right. Envelope, a little bit of attack, full sustain, release all the way to the left. Mono rotate, legato triller. Routing, we have the first insert after the first filter and the second insert before the amp. The first insert is a sine shaper, and drive is in the center, dry wet all the way to the left, clip, dry wet all the way to the left, drive left of center. So I think now macros. Okay, so we have vibrato, the most important thing. Almost every patch has vibrato as its first macro, otherwise it has that envelope thing going on. So there's this much depth, about I suppose like a quarter of the circle, and then that much rate, like an eighth. Next we have cutoff on the filter, on the low pass filter, and it's about half depth modulation. Macro 3 controls the wavetable position of the first oscillator going from square to saw. Macro 4 controls the amount of phase modulation on the modulation OSC. Macro 5 controls the amount of dry wet on the sine shaper. 6 for the clipping. 7 controls the amount of reverb. It's very subtle. And 8 is amp release. Okay, that does this patch. All right, number 6. Okay, so 2 oscillators. The first is on sine, intensity all the way to the right, amp all the way to the right, filter mix in the center. Second oscillator is a triangle, wavetable position all the way to the right, intensity all the way to the right, 1 octave above, amp all the way to the right, filter mix center, no mod OSC. We have some tape noise, color all the way to the right, and then tape hiss, and then the amp is just slight of directly left. We have a high pass 4 filter for the first filter, cutoff set all the way to the left, resonance in the center, high pass 4 again, serial mode, so they run from one to the other, cutoff all the way, or cutoff almost directly left, slightly above, resonance all the way down, volume max on both filters, mix all the way down, so that we're only getting audio out of the second. No effects. So I'm gonna have to update this patch. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to update this one at some point. Before it goes up, there will be something here. Okay, so we have in the envelope, same as the last one pretty much. We have, except for there's no release control. Here, I don't know, that's what I'll do. Release, and then I'll do blur. So blur to me is basically combination detune and stereo widening. Depending on what synth you're using, they might already have it stereo widened. For example, Sylenth and Serum come with 100% stereo widening by default versus Massive, which is 100% mono. And I like to call this brightness instead of EQ. All right. Sometimes I always have to go back and fix the patches after I'm done designing. Sometimes I find things during the videos and then you get to see me fix the patch and go through my thought process a little bit. I'm not sure if there's any, I guess I haven't gone over the macros or anything yet. Well, I increased the voices to 3, set it to mono, always. I think I'm gonna go with legato trailer instead. Okay. Next, I guess all of the first inserts just after the first filter. It's more filtering, lots of filtering. So macro 1 controls the cutoff of the first high pass filter. 2 is the resonance on the second. But it should probably be on this one instead. The sound design process is for sure iterative. You have to go back and make changes and make things better based on stuff you've done. Okay, high pass 2, or I suppose low pass, and then high pass 2. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm gonna get rid of this high pass. And I need to control vibrato. Oh, it has the internal. Nah, I'm gonna switch it for this. And once again, if you have multiple voices, you want to set the vibrato, LFO to mono so that they all pitch modulate together. Otherwise, you get detuning. Okay. Next is number 15. So yeah, the ring modulation on this is pretty intense. I'm just gonna turn it off and let people decide. Man, it's still doing it. What's going on? Is it the frequency shifter? Or the sine shaper? Or you probably... All right, it was the scream filter. Okay, so for the first oscillator, we have drive 3, 2 octaves above, wavetable position all the way to the left, intensity all the way to the right, amp all the way to the right, filter mix to the top. Second oscillator is throat. It's dirty throat, 2 octaves down, wavetable position all the way to the left, bend minus mode, intensity slightly left of dead right, or slightly above dead right. Second oscillator, or third oscillator is off. Modulation OSC, 1 octave down, only on, to bring modulation only on the second oscillator, knob all the way down, no noise, no feedback. Filter, we're only using the scream filter as indicated by all the sound sources going up. Cutoff is all the way increased and resonance is up, and scream is up and resonance is up. This is basically using this as a feedback source, similar to the feedback knob, because the scream filter is a feedbacking filter. It has feedback built in. I think that is what scream is doing, is increasing the amount of feedback and probably saturation at the same time. But with the cutoff all the way increased, you're not really filtering anything. So you're basically just amplifying the signal and distorting it. I'm not exactly sure how the resonance plays in. Yeah. The mix is all the way up. We have tube amp. All the way to the left, drive at like 2 o'clock, dimension expander, all the way to the left on dry wet, size, should all the way, should actually look like this. That's my preferred way of doing dimension expander, is exactly like that. All right, EQ, some cut, and then some high shelf. No, actually it's high shelf is centered. There's just some cut. Once again, the amp envelope, a little bit of attack. I think it's pretty much default release. No, slightly more than default release. Mono, legato triller. Routing, we have the first insert after the first filter, second insert right before the amp. We have a sine shaper with dry wet all the way to the left, drive at like 11 o'clock. Frequency shifter on the second insert, dry wet all the way down, pitch slight of midway. I think that's macros now. Vibrato. Macro 1 on depth and rate, that much control. I think it's pretty much default. Like if you initialize a patch, this is, I think, what you get. Macro 2 controls the dry wet and drive on the sine shaper. Frequency. Macro 3 controls dry wet on the frequency shifter. Macro 4 controls the dry wet on the tube amp. 5 controls the amount of portamento. 6 controls the amount of ring modulation. 7 controls the amount of dimension expander, and 8 controls. It boosts our lows and our highs, so it's a little more than just brightness. All right, next is 17. All right, we have just a smooth square, and this is probably one of the more popular ways to do this patch, is to use a square. I mean, Alesso and Sebastian and Grosso's Calling comes to mind, and then the hundreds of ripoffs similar to that, and then pretty sure Avicii's done something similar to this a couple times. Probably a little more tastefully done or with better post effects, but this is the starting point. So you can use a smooth square or a square They're slightly different, but it can be hard to tell. So one oscillator, smooth square, wavetable position all the way to the right, intensity all the way to the right. Move the filter slider up. Filter 1, high pass, cut off all the way to the left, resonance right there. I just added the high pass cutoff to brightness knob. All right, mix all the way up so that we're just using the first filter. Tube amp, dry wet all the way to the left, drive all the way to the right, dimension expander, dry wet all the way to the left, size all the way to the left, EQ, standard settings. Volume amp, the same again except for no release. Maybe slightly more attack. Also, I'm not really pointing this out, but I almost always set the velocity scaling on all the presets so that they scale, so the volume scales to the velocity notes you're playing on your keyboard or in your MIDI clips. Okay, next is the sine shaper, the first insert, the only insert we're using, and it's right after, right before the amp. It's on sine shaper, drive all the way up, dry wet all the way to the left. All right, onto the macros. Yeah, okay, so vibrato, that much depth, that much rate. I'm pretty sure that this is default if you initialize the patch. Macro 2 on the sine shaper, dry wet, full control. Tube, same deal. Brightness, it's on the high shelf and it's also on the cutoff so that we start cutting the lows, and then there's some resonance, so we start boosting whatever area it's cutting. Next we have phase modulation on oscillator 1, full control, full depth. 6 is the amount of feedback, more than half, like 2/3 probably, 2/3 depth. Ring modulation, full depth, and then 8, dimension expander, about, I don't know how to say it, like a 1/16 of the circle, not much. All right, I think that pretty much does it. Once again, you can get all of the 4 presets I just went through at sigtwistedminds.com. Demo link is in the descriptions, or you can buy all 20 in the pack. It's massive complete vibrato leads that we're doing. All right, that finishes up massive in depth number 18. Thank you very much.